Welcome to the Restricted Handling Daily Intel Brief. This is what's been going on in Iran and the Middle East in the past 24 hours. The biggest story right now is the status of a potential U.S.-Iran settlement. President Trump has announced that a great settlement could be signed in Europe within days, with Vice President J.D. Vance potentially representing the U.S. He canceled planned strikes against Iran just hours after threatening to hit them very hard, and even seize Karg Island, the critical oil terminal that handles most of Iran's crude exports. Iran, however, is far less certain. Their foreign ministry has said that while large parts of the agreement have been drafted, no final decision has been reached, and the country will not compromise on its red lines. This difference in messaging underscores the gap between U.S. public optimism and Iranian caution. Iran is clearly leveraging this ambiguity as part of a broader information and coercion strategy. The regime wants Washington to see that it can endure military and economic pressure, and that a failure to reach a deal could risk broader disruption. Iran is using the Strait of Hormuz as both a bargaining chip and a signaling tool, warning that oil and gas flows are contingent on coordinated passage. At the same time, the regime's messaging stresses that it is unafraid of a ceasefire collapse, signaling to U.S. policymakers and markets alike that Tehran believes it can withstand escalation. The draft terms of the proposed settlement, if accurate, would be a significant win for Iran. They reportedly include a permanent cessation of hostilities on all fronts, reopening of the Strait of Hormuz under arrangements acceptable to Tehran, release of tens of billions in frozen funds, suspension of oil sanctions, and U.S.-led reconstruction planning. Missile programs and Iranian support for proxies like Hezbollah may have been removed from active negotiation, highlighting the selective concessions that could maximize Iran's strategic freedom. Israel has publicly stated it is not a party to the memorandum, but welcomed Trump's assurance that any final agreement would remove enriched material, limit missile production, and end proxy support in the region. These discrepancies illustrate how complex alignment between regional allies is shaping the deal's trajectory. The Gulf states are maneuvering carefully amid the uncertainty. Qatar reportedly pursued a back-channel arrangement early in the war to protect its Ras Laffan gas complex, suggesting it might curtail production temporarily to raise global energy prices and pressure the U.S. and Israel to shorten the war. Doha has publicly denied any coordination, emphasizing that production halts were driven solely by infrastructure and personnel safety. Meanwhile, the UAE has engaged Iranian security officials directly, seeking to mitigate risk from Iranian strikes and maintain its economic and political stability. Other Gulf states are also hedging quietly, aware that the Iran conflict has direct economic and security implications for the region. Lebanon has emerged as another key variable. Iran is trying to preserve Hezbollah as a central instrument of influence, linking a Lebanon ceasefire to any broader U.S.-Iran settlement. Lebanese President Joseph Aoun is resisting, insisting that the country's future is Lebanese, not dictated by Tehran or Israel. Hezbollah has rejected direct talks with Israel, while Israel demands the group's partial dismantlement before withdrawing troops from the south. Meanwhile, Israeli forces are planning potential ground advances toward Nabateh, or along the northern bank of the Litani River. Hezbollah has extended the range of its fiber-optic FPV drones, which can strike targets from deeper inside Lebanon, complicating Israeli operational planning and demonstrating the evolution of asymmetric drone warfare. Energy remains at the center of strategic leverage. The Strait of Hormuz is still under Iran's partial control, with the regime stopping a tanker from transiting and the U.S. intercepting 2 Iranian drones. Global oil inventories are shrinking rapidly, with U.S. strategic reserves nearing their lowest levels since the early 1980s, and commercial stockpiles in Asia and Europe under pressure. Market sensitivity is extreme. Oil prices fell sharply when Trump announced progress on a deal, then rebounded slightly as uncertainty persisted. Qatar's energy posture, in particular, illustrates how Gulf states have become both collateral and active participants in the strategic calculus of this conflict. U.S. military operations continue to shape the landscape. CENTCOM targeted Iranian air defenses, surveillance systems, and drone command facilities across southern Iran, focusing on degrading the regime's ability to disrupt maritime traffic in Hormuz. The U.S. is enforcing a blockade on Iranian oil, striking vessels that attempt to move shipments in violation of it. These actions are intended less to destroy Iran militarily than to maintain leverage in the talks, influence markets, and constrain Tehran's operational freedom. The blockade has caused diplomatic friction, particularly after the deaths of 3 Indian seafarers on a vessel hit by U.S. forces, illustrating the broader human and political costs. Legal and humanitarian implications are mounting. U.S. strikes damaged water infrastructure in Bamani, affecting 20,000 residents amid historic drought and extreme heat. Experts have flagged the potential for war crime liability if civilian water resources were intentionally targeted. At the same time, the U.S. plans to deport Iranian and other migrants to the Central African Republic, including individuals with recognized protection claims, raising questions about the consistency of U.S. messaging on Iran and human rights. These developments feed a complex narrative that combines diplomacy, military coercion, and humanitarian exposure. In Israel, political and security developments add another layer of complexity. Netanyahu aide Jonathan Urich was indicted for allegedly leaking a classified document on Hamas negotiations to influence Israeli public opinion, a second aide in a broader Qatargate scandal. This comes as the Israeli military is still engaged in southern Lebanon, attempting to dismantle Hezbollah infrastructure amid ongoing airstrikes and cross-border skirmishes, while the ceasefire framework remains fragile. Taken together, the picture is one of a region where diplomacy, coercion, energy, and tactical military operations are inextricably linked. The U.S. and Iran are negotiating a potential settlement while maintaining leverage on multiple fronts. Gulf states are hedging and seeking to preserve economic stability, and Lebanon remains a strategic lever for Iran. Markets and energy flows are deeply sensitive to the conflict, and domestic political pressures in Washington and Tel Aviv are influencing both messaging and operational decisions. The story is far from over, but it is a high-stakes game of signaling, leverage, and survival, with consequences that extend far beyond the Persian Gulf. Thanks for listening and helping build this community. If you'd like to support the show, leaving a comment or sharing the episode helps more people find it. And if you want to continue the conversation, we publish a daily intel brief on Substack at restrictedhandling.substack.com with deeper analysis on Russia, China, Iran, the Middle East, and the DPRK. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next time.